One kind act has the power to change the trajectory of someone's life. As a homeless teenager, a pizza shop owner showed him grace, which taught him a valuable lesson about the power of kindness. Today, he gives former inmates a second chance at life by hiring them in his business, and the results are amazing. You're going to love today's guest. Welcome to the Socks and Soul Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Ditto. Let's go. All right, I have in my studio today, via a Zoom call, a good friend of mine named Mike Renstrom. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today. I'm really excited for my listeners to hear your story and to get a sense of what it's like to live your life to the fullest.
I don't know that anybody wants to live that to the fullest. Got to hold on tight. It's a ride.
That's exactly right. The first time that I met Mike, Annie and we had been married. It was like our first week of marriage, or I can't remember how. We hadn't been married very long, and we were on the way up to her grandparents' lake house. It's called Lake Kavanaugh. It's up in northwestern Washington State. And I grew up water skiing, as many of you in the audience know. My dad loved to water ski, and so we loved to water ski. We did a lot growing up, and all the way up, Annie just talked about this place, this magical place, Lake Kavanaugh, and how wonderful it was, and her and her parents and her uncles, all water skied, and it was starting to get dark. And, of course, your hope is that I would arrive at the lake early enough that I would be able to go water skiing. And at some point during the trip, Annie starts telling me about her neighbor, Mike, and in how, he knew the family growing up. And I wasn't really sure exactly what the story meant. But so as we're pulling into the driveway at Lake Kavanaugh, here comes this guy named Mike. And he's walking across the driveway, and he says, Annie, and Annie's excited to see Mike, and they hug each other, and Annie says he wants to go skiing, and Mike says something like, well, then how come you're not in the water yet? Go find a water ski and I'll meet you out there. And I kid you not, the sun had probably set 40 minutes prior to that. It was pretty dark. And so I didn't have to be told twice. So I sprinted into the garage. I found a ski. I found a life jacket. I went out there and Mike pulled me skiing, never even having met me before. But I knew instantly that this is a guy that I wanted to get to know better. This guy, he was the king of fun. He was the captain of adventure. This was my people right here. Do you remember that experience, Mike?
As you talked about it, I was like, oh, that night was a great night. And it's always fun when it's spontaneous.
Absolutely. The adventures are always the best when they're spontaneous. Well, Mike, you have a pretty interesting story. And I want to dive into it and talk about, how you got there and what you did and the obstacles that you overcame, to kind of put your life together the way that you have it now. Today, you own an auto glass business. You've ventured into really creative and interesting products, doing glass on big boats and yachts for the wealthy class. You have a number of employees, and you've got a beautiful family. But this is an adventure that started long ago, because your story has an interesting beginning all the way back to high school. What was going on with you back then?
Well, in the beginning, let's see, I would start with probably, I had an older brother, younger brother, grew up in North Seattle area. And when I was 13, my parents got a divorce, and my dad wasn't around a lot. And so I had a lot of responsibilities put on me early on. Older brother got married pretty young, got married when he was 19, kind of was gone a lot. And so my little brother and I were at home. Mom was at work. I had a lot of responsibilities, mow the lawn, caring for a house, different things as a young child. And so
was your dad kind of out of the picture at this point?
Yeah, pretty much. He was gone till I was about 23.
Oh, okay.
We talked once in a while, but he wasn't around much. having jumped right into doing a lot of those responsibilities, I matured quickly, had to be responsible for a lot of things. And I partly give the reason why I like adventure and fun so much to this day for missing out on some of the childhood fun stuff in teenage years. I did get away with doing some fun stuff, but nothing like I do in my later years of life. But that said, my parents, my mom worked hard. I took care of the yard and responsibilities and everything's at home. And at 13, that was just a lot for a kid to do. When I was 17, I was spending a lot of time at friends' houses late at night. Was very glad not to get involved in drugs or alcohol or anything, but I was late at night, staying places, not calling home, not being respectful to my mom. And due to that, my stuff was on the porch when I was 17. The door was locked, and I found myself kicked out of the house.
Were you a senior in high school at this point?
Senior in high school. So I was probably just after starting school, and I had a Volkswagen Baja that I had built from scratch, started on it when I was 15 and got it drivable by the time I was driver's license 16 years old. The fenders were duct taped to the sides of the car, and it was painted orange and primer. But it ran, and I could put fuel on it, and I could get from point A to point B. But I found myself living in the back of it. I took the back seats out and made a flatbed in there and had a pillow and sleeping bag, and found myself sleeping in the back of it across from a cemetery in Linwood, up in the woods. And
what was kind of your attitude or your feeling about kind of being homeless, living out of this car at 17 years old, still in high school?
At first it was sweet. This is great. I got independence. I could not be bugged anymore. I could do what I want to do. And that lasted all of maybe a day or two. And then I realized that I didn't have a shower, didn't have a fork, and I wasn't sleeping very good. And I thought, okay, well, this isn't so good.
You lasted a lot longer. You lasted a lot longer than my kids last when they say they're moving out. I mean, just the other day, Lincoln, my 6-year-old, told us he was out of here, and I said, well, don't forget your toothbrush. And he said, okay. And so he had put all of his stuff in a plastic bag, and he was walking out the door. And I said, hey, buddy, you should put it in a backpack. You're going to be able to go a lot farther if you put it in a backpack. And all the while I'm hoping to call his bluff, of course. So he puts it in the backpack. He starts heading out. And then Annie calls from the kitchen. It's time for dinner. And I was like, hey, buddy, do you want to have dinner before you run away? And he's like, yeah, I think I better have dinner before I run away. And so we had dinner, but he was still determined to go. Right. And so after dinner, he puts on his backpack and heads out the door. And then he came back and he said, well, it's starting to get dark. Maybe I better leave in the morning. So, but you made it as far as, you were in your car overnight, and this was a real deal. There was no turning back at this point.
Yeah. And as a 17-year-old, there's a lot of pride involved in, I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah.
No matter what, I'm going to make this happen. But quickly I had to figure out where a shower was going to exist, and that became at school. So I'd go to this Linwood High School in the morning and work out in the gym and use the shower, and then go to school. After school was usually an athletic sport or something in the afternoon, and then I would work at Pietro's Pizza at the Alderwood Mall in the evening time to make some money to put gas in the car and get some food.
So how long did this go on?
Well, the first few months were harder because it got cold at nighttime. But at the restaurant, it was quite an experience working at a pizza restaurant. We would make pizzas, and the manager of the restaurant noticed that I was messing up pizzas quite often. And usually how that worked is if it was a messed up pizza, it would get set aside. And at the end of the day, I would leave with it. And he pulled me aside one day and said, hey, I noticed that you mess up a lot of pizzas, and I would like it if you would just go ahead and take a pizza home every night, because clearly you're hungry and you work hard and do a good job. So I'd prefer that you just take one home and not feel the guilt of having to steal them. And I was really grateful to him for doing that. And like, I wish I could get a hold of him now. I don't even remember his name, but that did touch me in a big way. That was pretty cool.
So you're living in your car, showering at school, essentially stealing pizza from your employer, in a roundabout way. And this is a guy who reaches out and says, "Hey, Mike, you don't have to do this. I'll help take care of you here."
And that actually is huge, because as a kid, you're looking for approval and you're looking for anybody that will help out. And it actually helped me further on in life to be able to find people for employment and hire them and encourage them. And it helped me to realize and know that, I've experienced it firsthand. So it's easier for me to help somebody, because you can say, I actually empathize with you and know what it's like to not know where your next meal's coming from. And it actually was a huge benefit to go through those struggles. And it was hard. It wasn't easy by any means, but it definitely gives a perspective in life that later on, you can give back to people, knowing that it's hard to go through things like that.
Mike, you've always had for as long as I've known you, you've always had a great sense of empathy and connection with people. It's always been amazing to me, and it's something that I really admire about you, is your ability to just connect with everybody and really feel a really pure, genuine, love for your fellow man. And I have to think that, that these lessons that you learned as a young, cocky, homeless 17-year-old, must have played a significant role in that.
It did. Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that. And I do. I love people. I mean, I think every person that you meet in life has something to share and something to offer and something to join in with. I mean, it's an excitement just to get to know somebody new and find out what their life is all about and what drives them and what they've been through. And it's a great experience.
It's certainly something that our world could use a little bit more of, is understanding other people's perspective and, what makes them tick and why they act the way they do. Because it's generally not an accident. The way that people are, there's usually a reason for it. People are grumpy and mean. There's usually a reason for it. And it's interesting to learn that and get through and get to know them a little bit. And you're really good at it.
Well, thank you. I especially like older people, because usually there's not a filter there anymore. and I've found that it's pretty fun two different ways. And sometimes elderly are actually grumpy and unpleasant. And many are just over filled with joy and happiness. And it's just a pleasure to be with. For instance, your grandfather, Mr. Hickman he was a great joy in my life. He would smile and say, "Well, are you going to take me sailing?" And I go, "Absolutely, let's go." And some of my cherished moments were out on the sailboat, just having a good, deep conversation with a very wise, very kind-hearted man. And to this day, his lesson for me was touch a life every day. And that impacted me in a huge way, to learn from him and simply look. It doesn't have to be a big touch. It's just touch a life every day. And he set his life out for that. And he was a great mentor in that.
Yeah, you're talking about Bob Hickman, who is one of the kindest, gentlest men that I have ever met. And he is my wife's grandfather, and he's a world-renowned doctor. And if he thought that you needed his shoes, he would just give them to you. He would take his shoes right off your feet, his feet, and put them on you. He was that kind of guy. He was unbelievable.
Truly a great person to learn from, and I'll have to share a great moment with him, because as he was getting older, he got Alzheimer's, and he looked over, and I came over and gave him a big hug and said hi, and he kind of looked at me odd. And I introduced myself when he didn't know who I was. And I had grown up next to his cabin for 50 years. And he grabs a hold of my arm and he says, you know what? I just found out I own this place. And I said, really? And he goes, it is absolutely beautiful. It is. He said, he grabs my arm and he takes me inside. I've grown up in that place for 20 years prior to him owning it. And he takes me inside, room to room, just full of joy. Isn't this beautiful? Look at the view. And it was just such a special time to go room to room and see his joy that he had of having this beautiful place and sharing it with his family. And it's probably one of the most remarkable memories I'll ever have of Dr. Hickman. What a special person.
Yeah. And, and even in his later years, he was just, he didn't remember anything, but he would smile and hug you and be glad to see you, even though he had no clue who I was. But it didn't even matter because that's just who he was. He was just kind and gentle and awesome. What a great example to us today.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean by some elderly people when you strip it all down and they just get to be natural and normal in themselves. There's a preciousness that comes out of them that's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, so eventually you started an auto glass company. So how did that happen? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I did graduate from high school, just kind of barely, thanks to some friends at school that would help me with my homework. I definitely struggle at reading and writing and math, and I academically am very, very low. But I've been blessed, God has blessed me with all sorts of abilities of talents and gifts. And I knew that I liked working with my hands. So I went into an auto glass store in North Seattle and asked for a job. And they said, oh, we don't have any openings. And I said, well, what if, and they said, you don't have any experience. I said, well, how do you get experience if you can't get a job? And the manager's like, well, I don't know, but you don't have any experience, so it doesn't work. I said, okay, so why don't I work here and you don't pay me and you can teach me. And once I learn how to do it well enough that I'm valuable and worth something, then you can start paying me. And he thought, well, this young man, he wants to work. So he's like, I guess that'd be fine. So I showed up the next day and I worked, and a week went by and a month went by. And the moment I wasn't learning something about auto glass, I was cleaning the bathroom and sweeping the floor and cleaning all the tools. And this manager said, hey, clearly you want to work and you want to work hard and you want this job. So I got a job doing auto glass, and they continued to train and teach me. And I was working at that job when Roger Pickett, Annie, your wife's dad, came to me at Lake Kavanaugh and said, hey, you wanna work for Novus windshield repair company and do a replacement division? And I'm all in, let's do that. And so it was really good for me because I learned a lot more about purchasing glass and warehouses where you had to order the parts and have them delivered. And I just learned a whole different aspect of the auto glass industry. And I did tell him, though, that my goal was to be self-employed. I wanted to be my own boss. And I wasn't making a whole lot of money there, but I was working hard. And when I was 21, I quit that job to start Quality Glass. And at the time I had about $250 to my name. And I rented a little lean-to in the back of a used car lot in North Seattle. And the owner there said I could rent it for $100 a month, but I had to clean all the car parts and tires out of it before I could move into it.
Shortly after high school, you decide that you want to work on auto glass. You go work for free until they start paying you. Then you meet my father-in-law, who is a general manager of Novus Windshield Repair. So how long did you work for Novus?
About a year and a half.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, so a while. And at the time, it was great because I got to babysit his kids, which
including my wife,
all the kids, and I got meals, which was huge because I was invited over for dinner regularly. So I thought, boy, I'm eating well. I got family around me and people that love me, and I got to go on vacation to Park City, Utah with them and go snow skiing. I thought, okay, I'll babysit the kids and you guys can have a few nights to yourself, but I get the whole world here. I'm going on vacation to a ski resort. This is great.
That is so great. So you essentially got adopted into the family there then.
Absolutely. And one of the best things that ever happened to me, just being around him and the family and being encouraged and loved, it was priceless.
Okay. So then year and a half later, you're like, okay, I'm ready to go on my own. I feel like I got what I need. You rent this lean-to, you clean it out, and how did it go?
Well, I was riding my unicycles through park and rides with business cards in my pocket, and I put them on all the broken windshields in the park and ride parking lot. And if I put out 100, I would get approximately 8 or 9 jobs out of 100 cards on broken windshields. The first windshield I got, I ordered from a supplier. They delivered it. I installed it in the car, and I didn't have enough money in my account to pay for the glass. So I had to deposit what they paid me and pay for the glass on the very first windshield I ever put in.
Because you didn't have enough money to even buy the inventory.
Correct. Yeah. So I was trying to get into retail. It just was hard, business cards on park and ride cars. But I did get relationships with several used car lots around, and I started doing work for them and would work really hard. And the first year in business, I made $12,000.
Wow.
The second year in business, I made $17,000.
Okay.
The third year was $23,000. And my third year in business, I thought, maybe I shouldn't have done this because I made more working for Roger at Novus Windshield Repair Company. And this is hard.
Whose bad idea was it to be self-employed anyway?
And I just thought this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. And I was working a lot of hours, just trying to do whatever it took to make the business work. And
this whole time, you're in the back of this car lot.
I'm in the back of a car lot for a year and a half. And after that, I was doing enough business that I was able to rent a 2-bay garage just up the street from that, close to Green Lake. And that location I was at for 13 years.
Wow.
So it worked out really good. The landlord came to me when I was moving out, and I asked him, why did you never raise my rent? Because I was paying $1,300 a month
for 13 years.
13 years.
And it never went up.
Never one time. And he came to me, and as a landlord, everybody was scared of him because he wasn't a pleasant person to most all of the other renters that were renting from him. But he was always really good to me. So I asked him why he never raised my rent. And he told me, he said in his life with all of his rentals that he had, he never raised the rent if the rent was always on time. And he said, I never had to do any work on a building. If the toilet was broken, you fixed it. If a window was an issue, you'd fix it. If the roof was leaking, you fixed it. You never called me once for a repair, and your rent was on time every month. And I had a commitment to myself. I would never raise somebody's rent that rent was on time every month.
That is awesome. That is a great story. 13 years in a row, you never called the guy to fix your toilet or a leaky roof, and the rent was always on time. And because of that, he paid it to you in no rent increase for over a decade.
I moved out into my new shop, and a month later, he rented it for $2,800 a month.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That is amazing.
So just even things like that, that's just an important lesson. If you have a good renter, why would you ever want them to move out?
Yeah, exactly right. Isn't this exactly what you want? Pain-free, no drama. It's fantastic. That's a great story. Okay, so when did you hire your first employee?
About 2 years into it, I had my first employee, and then 2, and then 3, pretty quick after that. I actually found that employees were and are priceless. It's not only the wonderful relationship that you have with them, but seeing the growth and the development and the challenges even that they helped me with as an employer. I mean, we became friends and we worked hard and did a lot of great work and jobs together.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear on a very regular basis when I talk to business owners that the hardest thing to find are quality employees. And so when they find them, they hang on to them, treat them right and hang on to them.
It's so true. I also started a detail shop, so it's an auto glass and a detail shop. And the detail shop, about 7 or 8 years into it, SPU College would have me down to talk about small business, and all their college students would analyze my businesses from all the books to the hours to the jobs. And it was always fun because these college students, they're working hard going to college to get a job and make a bunch of money. And they would look at the detail shop and they'd look at me and say, "It doesn't make any money. Why are you doing it?"
Because I want to be self-employed. Because I told Roger Pickett years ago that I wanted to be self-employed, and gosh darn it, I'm going to prove myself right.
It was really interesting because the detail shop, I would actually hire a lot of people out of prison and spend time with them to work on getting them reestablished into the culture with being on time to work, doing a good job, caring for customers. And it was such a joy working with these young men and a few women that were just out of prison. And they would just grow and develop, and they were so enthusiastic about having given another chance. And I'm so proud of even Justin, one of my employees out of prison. He to this day owns his own auto glass company, and it's thriving. He's got a wonderful wife and 4 kids, and he and I are really close. I'd say we're brothers. We're super close, and he worked for me for 9 years.
Why did you start hiring people from the prison? Where did that come from?
Actually, I don't recall where it started. I actually don't remember where that started from. I think that the first one that I hired was a recommendation from a friend that I could talk to this place called Reynolds Work Release, and they were going through this Reynolds Work Release program to get re-entered into society through a program where they tried to find them jobs. And I got to know management there, and they got to know me. And I would say, look, you just need to go through and interview them really well before you even send them to me, because my whole goal is to find the best people that you have that actually don't want to be in the system anymore. And after a while, this guy named Dave, a big wig in the city of Seattle, says, "Hey, we've had good success." And the two of us he would hand pick a specific person to come and work for me. And we had really good success. I still do to this day.
You still use that program to this day?
I do. The same guy is still there, and I'll call him and be like, I need a detail employee. And he's like, "I know what I'm looking for. I'll call you back." And
that is so cool, Mike. That is so cool. I bet you have changed some lives by giving these guys a second shot at life and loving them, putting your arm around them.
Like I said, this college SPU is analyzing my books, and they're like, "Well, this company, it doesn't lose money. It just doesn't make money." They're like, "Why do you do that?" I'm like, can you imagine how amazing it is to see these lives change and grow and enter back into the culture and have confidence? I'll never forget one gal. She looked at me after working for 8 months. She had earned raises and promotions, and she was managing probably a year into her job. And she looked at me with tears streaming down her face as she's entering in a deposit slip and $1,000 or $1,500 worth of sales. And she's got tears in her eyes, and she says, "I can't believe you trust me to do this." And I said, "Lauren, there is absolutely no reason that I can't trust you, because you've never let me down. And all you've done is succeed and do an excellent job." And she smiled and she says, I won't ever let you down. And she was one of my best all-time ever employees. Absolutely amazing hard worker.
And here we are, thinking back at that pizza owner, in the Alderwood Mall, and a guy who, had, you worked hard, but he had every reason to fire you because you were flat out stealing from him, but he didn't. And here you are giving people a second shot at life by, going through that system, giving them a job, putting an arm around them. It's beautiful, Mike. It's just awesome.
I have 2 employees right now. I'm so proud of them. This is shocking to me. One of them, he's as close to being a brother of mine. He's worked for me for 5 years now. And the first 3 years was hard to just get him to eat 3 meals a day. And I go, "I don't understand this, Bo. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you need nourishment to do your job." And he go, "Well, this is so hard for me to do." I said, "I don't get it. Why is this hard for you to do?" And he goes, "Well, for 18 years, they brought me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't even think about it. I don't even know grocery shopping and planning a meal. I don't even think about that."
He had spent 18 years in prison and not once had to think about meal prep or anything. It just showed up. And so he's like, it's not like I set a timer like, "Oh, it's 5 o'clock. I need to go start cooking some potatoes or something." It just shows up. He had no idea.
And I'm just mind boggled. I'm like, I never would have thought of that. I mean, that's an actual struggle. And one of my favorite memories with him was bringing him up to Lake Kavanaugh. We do Employee Appreciation Day every year. And all my employees come up to Lake Kavanaugh and water ski and flyboard and do these. And Bo's like, he's ripped, like so strong from being in prison and lifting weights. And he stayed doing it. And I'm like, "I'm going to take you flyboarding and put your feet in jet boots and fly you up off the water." And
we need to explain to our audience what flyboarding is, because you took me flyboarding a number of years ago, and it's one of the coolest things I've ever done. So if you can imagine, like, Back to the Future, Marty McFly. Yeah. I'll put a picture up. Yeah. So you have this like skateboard strapped to your feet, and there's a tube that goes from a jet ski into this tube. And then you jump in the water with these things strapped to your feet, and Mike is sitting on a jet ski, and then he says, "Okay, stand up." And then he hits the throttle, and the jet from the jet ski goes through this 100-foot tube and starts to push you up out of the water. Like, it's incredible. And then as you figure out the balance, he pushes you higher and higher and higher. And, what feels like about 50 feet in the air, it's probably more like 15, but it's a spectacular experience. It is amazing.
It's great. And I bring Bo up, and he's on the dock, and he gets in the bindings, and I'm sitting on the jet ski, and he's got his life jacket on and this thing strapped to his feet, and he jumps in the water, and complete fear on the toughest man I've ever met in my life. As he's scrambling in the water, he's terrified. I'm like, "Bo, relax, you're okay. He's just freaking out."
You have a life jacket on, buddy.
You can float. You're wearing a life jacket. And it took so much to calm him down. And he calmed down. He looked at me and he says, "I just realized I've never been in the water before."
No way. They don't have swimming pools in prison, Mike.
I'm like, what? He goes, well, I was in a bathtub when I was a kid.
Wow.
Growing up, but I've never been in the water before. And I'm thinking, oh, but I'm putting you on a flyboard with a life jacket in a lake. Didn't you think to tell me that you've never been in the water? He said, I didn't think it would be scary. I thought I'd be fine. And yet, because of our relationship and how close we are, I was able to calm him down and simply say, you're okay, float for a minute, get used to it. And 10 minutes later, he was flying on a flyboard up over the water, and he had never been in the water before.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
That's just totally amazing. It's just a great story. And, and it goes to what I said earlier, you live your life at such a joyous level. And something that I learned about you a long time ago is you derive joy from watching other people like experience new things, especially. I'm thinking of all the things that, I've seen you like once a year, most years for the past, how long have I been married to Annie? 18 years or so. And flyboarding and wakeboarding. You took me on an air chair thing one time. That was crazy. You taught me how to fish. I'd never fished before. I did that, on that little dinghy thing that you have. I mean, all of these things for a guy that I only see once a year, you are the king of deriving, great joy from watching other people experience new things. It's just amazing.
There's nothing better than watching somebody say, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do that. It's just not my thing. And I'll be like, why don't you try it? And then if you don't like it at any point, we'll just come back.
Yeah. And
everybody just fills up with joy and says, I did that. Like I accomplished, that was really fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's another huge thing that I really love to see people get out of their comfort zone, try things that they never thought they would do before, experience life. I've always said, boy, if you have an option of watching somebody on TV doing it versus going out and experiencing it, that's a no-brainer. You got to just get up and go try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go try it. Okay, so you've been running your auto glass company for a number of years, and then you get into yacht glass, boat glass, like specialized stuff.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, that was a transition mostly because I had an employee that was a mathematician. And one day he's asking me all these questions about how many windshields have you put in your lifetime? And I'm like, I don't know. I started when I was 17. So many. He goes, how many per day? How many per week? That's how many months? He's calculating all this stuff out. And he comes to me, he says, do you realize you've put in over 10,000 windshields in your lifetime? And I'm thinking, I don't think I want to do it anymore.
You're like, okay, I'm tired. I'm tired of putting windshields in.
That's kind of like Forrest Gump at the end of his run. He just stopped.
He's like, I'm tired. I'm going home. Okay. Yeah. Can you blame the guy? I mean, holy cow.
I'm thinking, maybe, I started getting into street rods and show cars and custom cutting glass for some high-end street rods. And that was fun and challenging. And then I started working on smaller boats and a little bit bigger boats and doing more challenging type jobs. And what I found was that it's a very small niche and there's not a lot of work to do on high-end yachts. But if you do a few of them and do it for 2, 3, 4 years, your name gets out pretty fast to, hey, call Mike at Quality Glass. He can design things, create things, make stuff with glass. It's pretty open-ended. And the referrals just continue to grow and grow, and more people that I would meet and do a job for them ended up becoming $1, $2, $3 million yachts. And The most expensive yacht I've ever worked on was $330 million. And I did 23 different jobs on that boat and got to know more people that way. And then high-end yachts started becoming more popular. So I was getting opportunities to go create different glass jobs on different boats.
How long ago did you start doing the yacht stuff?
Pretty much 15 years ago. So I've owned the auto glass for 30 years as of last January, and about 15 years into it, I started doing boat glass.
And was that a deliberate move? Were you like, I'm going to go start getting into this niche, or how did that happen? That's a really interesting, change of pace.
Yeah, I think ultimately I started doing it just for something different. And as I started seeing that there were more higher end boats that needed very challenging jobs, even the ferry system for the Seattle ferries, those are very, very challenging, very heavy glass, and very large yachts that are 120 feet long. I've used cranes to actually crane the glass up into the openings on the fly bridge that's very high off the water. And so the more you do challenging jobs, the more you learn or experience or figure out how to solve a problem. It becomes really fun to say, okay, we actually accomplished that. There's many jobs where I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but we've done everything to figure it out. And at the end, they turn out beautiful and the customers are happy. And it's also the relationships with the customers. I've got the most remarkable customers ever. Just even 2 days ago, I was in Tacoma, Washington, where Peter Altman, he's the son of the Woman of Gold. And the Woman of Gold was painted by Gustav Klimt, and his mom's parents were killed by Hitler, and the paintings were all stolen. And there's a movie about her life, The Woman of Gold, and he's got a big, beautiful yacht, and he's the most tender-hearted, giving, wonderful man. And we became friends, and he just called us up and said, hey, I want to have you come down for dinner. And we just go down and hang out with our customers. It's just remarkable.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
What's that?
That doesn't surprise me at all, Mike. It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you show up and do a windshield on my car. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if all of a sudden we became best friends.
That is if you think about it, it's like Dr. Bob Hickman. He says, touch a life every day. Well, you can imagine just taking the time to talk for 5 minutes to a stranger. And next thing you know, you find out they're remarkable people. And I actually think most people want to spend time with people and get to know others and share their life with others. I just don't think that a lot of people take the time or are willing to be a little bit vulnerable to share about their life or their experiences. But it's so fun to get to do that. It's great. Yeah,
it is. You're exactly right. Getting to know people on a deeper level is always a rewarding process, without a doubt. So what's the most interesting job that you ever did, on a yacht?
Oh, it's probably the $330 million yacht. He had 8 individual refrigerators in a deli room. The deli room had meats and cheeses displayed at a deli bar, and guests would come in and pick what they would like to have with meats, cheeses, and wines. And the owner had an issue about there being condensation on the glass for 12 seconds when you open and close the glass refrigerator door.
So are we talking about like the cooler aisle at Walmart, those kind of doors?
Yeah, and there's the inside secret to figuring out things like how to get rid of condensation on a refrigerator door. He hires me to solve this problem. And of course, every self-employed person is going to say, Oh yeah, no problem. I'll get back with you on that. And then the sleepless nights begin where you're up all night long going, how does that work anyways?
Is that even possible? Like, what did I just sign up for? I mean, it's a $330 million yacht. Wouldn't they have thought of that?
Exactly. So I find myself at the ice cream aisle at Safeway.
Here we go.
Closing the door. I'm like, condensation? Close the door. And it slowly dissipates from the rim. I'm like, how does that work? And I feel the rim, the metal rim in every grocery store is heated. And the heat from the metal rim slowly dissipates the condensation off of the glass until it's gone in the middle.
Okay, that makes sense.
Course, that wouldn't work for a billionaire yacht owner.
That's too slow, right? It's too slow.
So they're on Range Rover vehicles. They have a windshield that is heated throughout the entire windshield. And it's a tiny little grid system with thin heater lines as thin as your hair that you can't see. And it has an electrical conductor, and we put it on a transformer, and you could dial in the temperature in the entire piece of glass. That company is in Switzerland, and they built 8 individual laminated pieces with grid systems in them. And they were laminated together and put a stainless steel frame on it, and we could make it to where there was no condensation on his refrigerator door.
I mean, okay, if you've got a $330 million yacht, I'd imagine that it's like, you can say things like, fix this problem, I don't care how much it costs. 12 seconds of condensation, how much did it cost?
Oh boy. Well, the refrigerators didn't work properly after we put the heated glass in because they wouldn't get cold enough to keep the food cold enough. So they hired a refrigerator company to come in and fix the refrigerators and make them colder. So between the glass, the refrigerator, the transformers, the electrical, it was probably $58,000.
That's awesome. That cracks me up. But you fixed his problem. You were the guy.
No more condensation on the windows.
It's a miracle, Mike. It is a total miracle.
All because of Safeway. They just taught me how to get it done.
And you ordered custom Range Rover glass out of Switzerland. Had it shipped to Seattle. And is that where the yacht was? Was it even in Seattle?
The yacht was in Seattle for 100. Yeah, it was in the Seattle for 2 months. And everybody getting on and off the boat. There was probably 100 techs going on and off the boat. They checked our bags and tools every day. They checked our social security numbers, did background checks. Mm-hmm. It was pretty extravagant.
Yeah.
But it was a fun job. It was probably the coolest job I've ever done.
That is remarkable. Just to step foot on a vessel like that, I bet is pretty cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've done work for the owner of Rolex Watches. He was really neat. It's just fascinating to see all the different yachts that are built around the world. And yeah.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. So how many employees do you have today, Mike?
I have 7 employees right now and 1 full-time yacht glass guy. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's a great situation because I've known Mark since I was in 2nd grade. We went to the same high school together. Our parents were good friends. We grew up in the same church. We were on the same swim team together. And he ran a company with his dad for years, and he would come to Anacortes. When I'd go do a yacht job up there, he would come out and see what I was working on. And he and his dad finished up their business, and he called me and said, "Hey, can I work for you? Can you teach me how to do yacht glass?" And I said, "Absolutely." So he drove from Anacortes an hour every single morning, worked with me for a year. I taught him and trained him. He's on a boat every day now, and he loves his job. We have a blast working together.
That
We've
is
known each
awesome.
other since 2nd grade.
That is so cool. That is very cool. You guys working together, fixing problems like, defrosting, deli doors. What a great experience.
It's so fun.
That is so fun. All right, Mike, I need to ask you a really important question. I need you to tell me what your philosophy is on socks.
They definitely need to be wool.
Okay.
They definitely need to be warm. And I'm pretty particular about my socks. They have to be purchased at Cabela's.
Uh-huh.
And I have 24 pair of the exact same socks.
So you don't vary your style of sock at all. You found one you like and you wear that exact pair every day.
Every day, got them on right now.
Okay, what are they? You got to tell me like what style. I mean, are they Cabela's brand or what? You know what are these things?
Cabela's brand. They're extremely soft. They're very warm, and once I find just the right pair, I have to buy a lot because they're going to change them, and then I won't be able to find them again.
So you stock up. So when they start changing that style, you've got some for the future.
That's exactly it.
That's a good plan. That's a good sock philosophy, a sock philosophy. I like that.
There we go.
There are few things in life better than putting on a nice, clean, warm, new pair of socks.
Agree.
You know, if I can't have a $330 billion yacht, I can put on a new pair of socks and I can feel like $330 billion.
A good pair of socks makes for a good day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The perfect example of you and your level of funness happened in a random YouTube video not that long ago. Tell us the story about this. This is amazing to me.
Oh, it was so much fun. I'm working on a boat in Seattle and my phone rings and this guy introduced himself as a YouTube. This is Zach. I have a YouTube channel. And I'm like, okay, I don't know a lot about YouTube, but all right. And he said, we have 700,000 subscribers, which to me, I had no idea what that meant, but okay. And he said, we're looking to see if you'll take us on the flyboard. And I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. Yeah, we can do that. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. And they said, well, we're always looking for adventures and fun and things that are different that we can film and put on our YouTube channel for our subscribers. And I thought, I told him, I said, well, we can do more than just flyboards. Let's have a day of it. We're going to have fun. Let's have some fun. And they're like, well, what would we do? And I said, a lot of stuff. I would just come to my house at 9 in the morning and we'll make a day of it. He sounded excited. Okay, that sounds great. He showed up at 9. We juggled fire. We went on kneeboards behind a 4-wheeler in the backyard through the woods. We went on rope swings and zip lines and we had a blast together. We went to Lake Kavanaugh and went on a jet ski and they flew off of that and they went on the flyboard. And most of all, we just had a great time together. These two young men started this YouTube channel and they're from London. They came from London just to do a film and adventure, and we had a great day together. It was fun. It's
an amazing video. I mean, I'll link I'll put the link in the show notes so that my audience can watch it. It is hysterical, and and you watch this and you'll just get a perfect sense of what Mike Renstrom is all about and what I was introduced to the day that I pulled up to Lake Kavanaugh as a newlywed. And he said, what are you waiting for? Get your ski on and let's go. And that's the way you do it, man. Let's do it. Let's start an auto glass company. Let's start fixing yachts. Let's figure out how to solve a guy's problem with his deli doors. It's just, it's great. It's great stuff, Mike. It's just great stuff. Well, Mike, I sure appreciate you taking the time to share your story with my audience. I think it is exceptional what you have done with your life and where you have come from. So how can people connect with you?
Oh, if anybody just wants encouragement, or if they're starting a small business, or just really anything, it can be random. Some of the most random things are the best things, because sometimes it's just somebody that wants to start a small business, or they've got an idea to do something. And it's like, well, let's exercise that a little more. I call it brainstorming. We'll just put a whole bunch of ideas out and talk about them and figure out what's next. And I'm open. I love to meet new people. I love to meet new adventures or what somebody has ideas for doing. I'd love to come alongside people that want to be self-employed and have a great idea and want to move forward with that. That's something that's encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a great power of positivity. You are a force for good in this world, Mike Renstrom. Thank you for what you've done, and thank you for what you continue to do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the other part of it is I've been most overwhelmingly blessed. And when God blesses somebody so much, it makes it so much easier to get back in the blessings and to encourage people to spend time, growing in the Lord and growing in their likes and achieving things that people thought they never could do. There's nothing better than that. I've always said, if somebody offers to you to do something that you've never done before, make sure you never say no. Just, you need to do it. If it's something new and you've never done it, you need to do it, because it might be something you're just passionately in love with and it's great. And it might be something you don't care for, but that's okay. You would never know if you didn't just try it. It's
just fantastic advice. That's just great advice. Just go do it. And you may not even realize what you're capable of. You may not even know. Awesome, Mike. Well, thanks so much for coming on with me. It was great to meet you. I look forward to my audience's response, to what they heard today. And appreciate you coming on. And that wraps up this episode of the Socks and Soul podcast with Mike Renstrom. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
The Socks and Soul podcast is a production of Ditto Film Media. If you enjoy this content, be sure to give it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Join the conversation on Facebook at Socks and Soul Podcast.